give folks a little bit of your background again, because we had you on a few months ago talking about the importance of the Second Amendment, and especially from your perspective as a Native American, and why the Second Amendment is so important. But so give us a little bit of your background, and then your thoughts on this whole controversy.
Sure. So I'm Native American. I'm Digne and Wasiowa Native American. I grew up on the reservation. I'm an apprenticed healer. I advocate quite frequently on behalf of Native Americans and for, different issues that I believe are extremely important to the well-being and the ongoing prosperity of the Native people, one of which, as you know, I feel very strongly about is the Second Amendment, the right to protect yourself. And so here we are again, facing another issue that we are seeing that face, Native American people, and now has been forced on us, which is the media using us as pawns to try and instigate, racial disparity and frustration between people in unnecessary and entirely dishonest ways. I watched the video clip of Nathan Phillips, the Native drummer, who walked into the center of a group of boys who were waiting for their school bus to pick them up because they had participated in the Right to Life March, which is basically a pro-life march. And the Native American march had taken place before that in D.C., and their buses had already departed around 5 p.m., and so the native people had already mostly cleared out, and so now the students who had also come to march with both indigenous people and then later on with the Right to Life March, then all had to be back to get on their buses. While they're waiting, they're standing in circles, they're chanting and doing cheers and doing whatever, and you see Nathan walk into the center of them and just kind of push his way into this group of boys with his drum. And at first he said he was doing it to promote peace, because you also had a group called the Black Israelites there trying to instigate trouble with both the indigenous people and the white people or white students who were standing there wearing the red MAGA hats waiting for their buses. And so, but then he walks up and he starts putting that drum in people's faces, in children's faces. And one student in particular, instead of moving out of his way, he just stood there. And he stood there and he smiled, and he didn't do anything. And for some reason, the media is really promoting this as disrespect, as insulting, as a racial issue, that this is now a problem of white versus native, of Trump versus native, and these are all misleading and dishonest facts. And
yeah, what was your reaction when you see this Nathan Phillips guy? Because the way it was, because I was seeing the news, and and I take a break from a lot of this stuff, at least on for one day over the weekend, because it's just refreshing to take a break from the news. But the reactions were pouring in from left and right alike. Even conservative pundits were piling on with the establishment media, saying, these stupid Catholic kids from white kids from Kentucky disrespected this Native American man. They were taunting and jeering him. But then now we see the full video, and it just looks like. What was your reaction to what this Nathan Phillips guy did?
Yeah, they were being kids. They were standing there. They didn't taunt him. They weren't saying anything. They just stood there. Some of them even started trying to chant along with the drum beats. And as far as from my perspective, and just looking at it as as an onlooker that wasn't really prepared to view it in a racial way, I just saw it as kids not being sure what to do in a very confrontational and difficult circumstance. And he was, and you could see that Nathan was purposefully antagonizing those children. I would never, as a Native person, I know that you don't take a hand drum and you don't put that in someone's face and bang it in their face. That's not what we do. That is disrespectful to anybody let alone to do it to somebody who's not of your culture and doesn't understand the implications of it. It's disrespect.
Well, and the point you made too about the media trying to use, your point saying that the media tries to use Native Americans as pawns for their agenda, and which is typically for a more liberal agenda. I mean, I think take the issue of coal, for example. I mean, gun control would be another one where, if a tribe in Washington State is doing a drumming ceremony or something in opposition to coal, boom, that gets a lot of mainstream media attention. That'll be the New York Times centerpiece. But if a tribe back in Montana is doing the same thing in support of something that provides a lot of revenue and resources for their reservation, it doesn't get the attention. And so it's same thing with gun control.
It's the same thing with pro-life. It's the same thing with the pro-life march versus the women's rights march. You see a ton of coverage for the women's rights march. You see very little coverage for, the pro-life marches, unless it's negative, viewing or negative media.
Yeah.
So,
great.
Again, we have to really start discerning facts here. And this is something I've been saying. You and I are friends on Facebook, and this is something I've been writing all morning on my Facebook because I have mostly all Native people on my Facebook. I have very few non-Native people. And most all of those Native people, I would say good 80% of them, are posting about how this white kid is the problem. And he represents a larger problem within our society that does not exist.
So it's all the white people that are virtue signaling about this story, then, is what you're telling me. Very interesting.
I mean, it's moral cream. It's just dishonest. And so I've been, I've really been.
Tell you what, hold that thought for just a second. Miri'kai Walter's out of Helena. Hold that thought for just a second because we got to take a quick break here on this show. Get some final thoughts from Miri'kai and Helena, and then we'll jump right back into your calls as well. Phone lines are open for you, 294-0970. So after Miri'kai, we'll talk with Bob in Columbia Falls. Join us from Helena. Thanks so much for calling in. Miri'kai Walter's in Helena now, but Miri'kai, I think you grew up on the Flathead Reservation, right? Do I remember that correctly?
Correct.
Yes,
yeah. I did.
Well, I just got a note from a gentleman named Chris in Polson. He said, hey, thanks for inviting Miss Walter on to speak on this issue. Yeah, that was an interesting point you were making just before we had to take that commercial break. So you said most of your friends, your friends on Facebook are your fellow Native Americans, but you've noticed that it's the white people on Facebook that are doing more of the virtue signaling, saying, yeah, the white kid was wrong here in this whole instance. That's pretty interesting.
It's equal. It's equal across the gamut of my white friends and my Native friends. But the problem with it is it makes me angry because it's not a good representation of Native Americans. We are not victimhood seeking people, and that is not what we should be doing. Is crying wolf in the face of children. That's dishonorable, and this is something. This is a message I've been sending out all day, which is, racial solidarity does not always mean honor. If you're willing to disregard fact and justice and truth in order to stand in racial solidarity simply because you're the same shade as somebody else, then you no longer have the honor that is so important to our people. You've lost it. Fact and truth is above all else. It matters none what color you are or what tribe you're from or what people you descend from. If you're willing to throw away your truth, then you no longer have honor. And so, it's really actually disheartening, and it's frustrating to see how quickly people are willing to jump to judgment against anyone in the name of tribalism or racialism, simply because the mass media promotes this idea and continues, to do so. And as such, we're seeing more division. We're seeing division amongst, Native people. We're seeing division amongst the Native people from other races. And then we're allowing for, truly non-interested parties to divide us because they have no true interest in us other than to use us to play a political game that ultimately, only benefits them. So, I've really been imploring people to really look hard and look deep and find out why it is that they're so willing to jump to a conclusion simply because one's Native and one's white. That's not a safe or truthful way of living.